Okay, this will be short and sweet, I promise. They all could be short and sweet, unless if people
It's specifically during like
the reason that they're not short and sweet is because people are asking so many questions. If you would just passively accept whatever you're being told and not inquire about everything all the time, then things would go a lot quicker. But because people are so inquisitive here,
be sheep.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So I'm going to start off from the end of last week's parsha. At the end of Kisavo, there's a whole long list of curses that are listed to the Jewish people, and at the very, very end, so after this list of curses is finished, so in Perek Chav Tes Pasuk Aleph, Vayikra Moshe el Kol Yisrael Vayomar Lehem Atem Reisem Es Kol Asher Asa Hashem Leinechem Be'eretz Mitzrayim V'Faro L'Chol Avadav V'L'Chol Artzo. You have witnessed everything that God has done to Paro and his nation. V'lo nosan Hashem lachem leiv ladas ve'inayim liros v'oznaim lishmoa. God has not given you a heart to know and eyes to see and ears to hear ad hayom hazeh, until this very day. So says Rashi something very interesting on this pasuk. Ad hayom hazeh, until this very day. Shamati, says Rashi, I heard. I've heard the interpretation of this verse is the following: She'osa hayom shenosan Moshe sefer haTorah livnei Levi. This was the day that Moshe gives over the sefer Torah that he wrote to the tribe of Levi. K'moshe ne'emar, like it says, b'parshas Vayelech, vayidna el kohanim b'nei Levi, and he gave the Torah scroll to the Kohanim, the sons of Levi. Bo kol Yisrael lifnei Moshe ve'amru lo. Moshe the Jewish people come and in protest to Moshe, and they say, Moshe Rabbeinu af anu amdu b'Sinai. We also stood at Sinai, v'kibalnu es haTorah v'nitna lanu, and it was given to us. U'ma'ata mashlit es b'nei shivtecha aleh. And why are you giving special treatment to your own tribe, that they should be the ones that have the Torah and we have to consult them? Why don't we also have the Torah given to us? Vayomer lanu yom machar lo lachem nitna lanu nitna. And see what they're accusing? They're suspecting B'nai Levi that in the future generations, the Levites will claim the Torah was only given to us and not you. Now, what that probably means is that we are the only ones that have access to the Torah. It's true that you're obligated to do whatever we tell you because you're obligated in the Torah, but in terms of accessing the Torah firsthand, the Levites are the only ones that are able to do that, and you have to accept what we say. Hayom hazeh hevanti, so says Moshe, the fact that you came and protested, that you also wanted the Torah directly. Hayom hazeh hevanti she'atem devekim v'chafetzim b'makom. Now I understand that you truly desire and want personal first-hand contact with the divine. This past week, I'm giving a lot of thought to especially in light of what we discussed last week, in terms of that the nature of the Yomim Noraim, the Yom HaZikaron that we're doing now, that we're entering now, is writing what it is that we want to play out in the future. And there's a problem with that. The problem is that we're all working with certain assumptions about what it is that we should be writing, what it is that we should be wanting. And that's obviously a legitimate thing for someone to search their own soul and to search their mind and to search their desires and yearnings and figure out what it is that they're hoping to accomplish and hoping to progress in. But at the same time, there's also a lacking there, because what if the frame that we're in is a wrong frame? And this is not. I want to qualify what I'm saying. I want to define what I'm saying very clearly. I'm not trying to cast, the infinite death spiral of doubt on everything. That you think that you're right, but really you could be wrong. And then when you find out the next right answer, well, maybe you're wrong. I'm not trying to do like the infinite doubt thing. It's very, very practical. As someone progresses in their maturity and their understanding, and their mind develops and their consciousness develops, they realize that the things that they were going after in life at one stage were petty and silly and perhaps not the best things to aim for and strive for. Even if there's not such a huge categorical shift, there could be incremental shifts. Right, a person, for example, this is actually a really, really good example for people who are sitting in yeshiva and who are motivated to study Torah, and they remain motivated to study Torah for their whole lives. But the definition of what it means to progress in Torah can change, and it can change quite drastically. I know that for me, I've spoken to many people in this chabur, like one-on-one, like for me personally, I can say that there's a massive narrative arc of when I first entered yeshiva, of my conception of what it means to progress in Torah learning, and what I consider progressing in Torah learning today. It's a very, very different perspective. So the point of what I'm saying is that when a person sets out to decide what it is they should be aspiring to and what it is that they should be focusing on and how they set their goals, so there's a fundamental problem with that, because they know, if anyone who has even a smidgen of maturity knows from first-hand experience, that those very things can change, and hopefully change for the better. And this is what this pasuk is alluding to, that God has not given you a heart to know until today. Before, you didn't have a heart to know. This whole time you were walking around, it was almost like you were walking around sleepwalking. But now you have a heart to hear. I want to just explore some themes now from these parshas that we're reading. And just as a side note, it's not really a side note, but just to give context to what's going on. From the rest of the from now until the end of the Torah, really from last week's parsha, it's really a very, very tightly packed progression until the end of the Torah, because we have the klolos that are listed in Parshas Kisavo, which really segues very, very quickly into this parsha of Nitzavim, which is really Nitzavim and Vayelech. They're not really two distinct things. Like, we divide them practically because we need to parse out the Torah laning for all the weeks leading up to Sukkot. But it's really a very, very smooth progression in. In fact, the Gemara that we quoted last week about the takana to read the klolos of Mishnah Torah before Rosh Hashanah, Tosfos there brings an opinion that the klolos of Mishnah Torah include Parshas Nitzavim. As we will see, this is the pshat of the psukim seems to be that way. Why is that? Because in the very beginning of Parshas Nitzavim, it says, "Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem." You are all standing here before God today. The heads of the tribes and the officers from the high officials until the people with the menial jobs. And why are you standing here? And His curses, that God is establishing with you today. How do the klolos end off from last week's parsha? Elu divrei habris asher tzivah Hashem es Moshe lichros bnei Yisrael. These are the matters of the covenant that God commanded Moshe to establish with the Jewish people. And Moshe says in the beginning of this week's parsha, and now I'm going to bring you in to this covenant and the curses which God has commanded me to establish with you. So it's almost like cutting off Kisava from Nitzavim is also not particularly organic. It's parsing out the Kriyas HaTorah to complete all the weeks that we have until Sukkot. But it's really one long progression. And also Parshas Vayelech, which, as we just saw a minute ago in Rashi, the giving over of the Torah, the giving over of the physical Sefer Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu to the Jewish people before he dies, and to Shevet Levi, and then Moshe subsequently has to write a bunch of other Sefer Torah in order to give to all the other tribes, because the other tribes are like, why do the Levites get special treatment that only they get a Sefer Torah, right? And we don't get a Sefer Torah. That's also really part of the same progression. And how does Parshas Vayelech end off? Moshe Tzvi? It's okay, I have it in front of me. Vayidaber Moshe ba'oznei kol kahal Yisrael es divrei hashira hazos ad tumam. Moshe speaks these words of the Shira until they were completed. What's the Shira? The Shira is
the Torah.
Hazinu. This is the parsha afterwards,
that's
which we will read in the parsha in the Shabbat between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. That's the parsha that we'll read. But really, this is all one long regression. The curses of Kisavo lead into Nitzavim, which is the establishment of the bris that was spoken about in Kisavo. Vayelech is also just finishing that off, handing over the Sefer Torah, which is the contract. It's the physical contract of the bris. And then Vayelech ends off with the Shira, that Moshe spoke out the Shira, which is Ha'azinu. And what is Ha'azinu? Ha'azinu is the speaking out of how this bris, how this covenant will play out in history. Explicitly, that's what Parshas Ha'azinu is about. What this bris will look like in the course of Jewish history. This is all one long progression. Okay? So just keep in mind that this is the context in which we're operating in.
Is when we see Vizos of Bracha, is that anything to do with the Bracha of the that we mentioned in the whole idea of the Tocha versus the Bracha?
Oh, so we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. B'ezrat Hashem. So I just want to do a little bit of pshat analysis on the psukim in Nitzavim. Okay. Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem. You're all standing here before God today. We just read a second ago that God is going to. You're standing here so that God can establish the covenant that He spoke out with you a moment ago about the blessings and the curse, etc. I'm not only establishing this covenant with you, the people that are physically standing here before today. All the people that aren't here today, meaning the people that are going to be in the future. Next pasuk. You saw that which we experienced in Egypt. And you saw all their abominations and all their idolatry, the statues of wood and stone. Lest there be amongst you, amongst this nation, amongst this whole nation, there be a man or a woman, mishpacha, a family, or shevet, or a tribe, that their heart is going away from God. And he decides, you know what, the Torah really isn't for me. I'm going to go and do the Avodah Zarah thing that I saw in Mitzrayim and amongst all the nations that we passed through. And he's going to hear about these curses. He's going to hear about this covenant, which involves all these curses that we just read about. And he's going to say, I'm going to go after my own heart. Meaning, I'm not going to join the bris. I'm not going to join the covenant. It's true that the Klal Yisrael is doing one thing. I'm not interested in the Klal Yisrael program. I'm going to go do my own thing. Next pasuk, God says, Lo yaveh Hashem lisloach lo. God will not forgive this person. Ki az ya'ashanaf Hashem b'kinaso ba'ishahu. God will be very angry at that man, at that individual person that does this. And all the curses that are written in this book, they're going to fall upon him. There's no way out of this. There's no way out of this covenant. You can't say, I'm not interested in the klal. I'm going to go do my own thing. Okay? Vivdilo Hashem l'ra'ah mikol shiftei Yisrael. And God will separate him from all of the tribes of Israel. Okay? Kachol halos habris. In order to demonstrate all the curses of this covenant. Okay, so what is the message? Seems pretty clear. What's the message? The message is that you all have this covenant. The covenant is a collective covenant on all the Jewish people. Now, lest there be an individual or maybe a family or a group of people amongst you that's going to say, you know what, this Klal Yisrael thing isn't for me. We're going to separate ourselves from Klal Yisrael and we're going to go do our own thing. Says God, don't think that that's possible. That's not an option. You can't separate yourself from the Klal. That's clear. That's clearly the message. Yes? Yes, do we all agree? You were going to ask something?
The last person you quoted, I think the article defines it as referring to the whole entire tribe being punished.
How could it say the whole tribe? It says, Lo yaveh Hashem yisloach lo, ki oz yashana b'Hashem v'kinaso ba'ishahu. V'ivdilo Hashem l'ra'ah mi kol shivtei Yisrael. He will be the individual will be separated from amongst the tribes of Israel.
Because it's not saying Bnei Yisrael, it's saying instead Shiftei Yisrael, saying his tribe will be separated from the rest of the tribes.
Hivdilo in Hebrew means he, the individual, will be separated.
Shevet is also could also be Yachid. But it makes sense with the context at the beginning. It says Penis B'chem Isha Shevet, even a Shevet.
The point that I'm making is it could be one person or it could be a group of individuals. It's fine. It does. It says in the beginning, Isha, a man or a woman. Mishpacha, a family, Oshevet, right? The point that it's saying is that there's going to be an individual or a small group that's going to try to separate themselves from the rest of the klal. Yes, so are we in agreement? Yeah, good. Now, next pasuk. Listen to the next pasuk. And the final generation that's going to come up from you, that's going to follow after this generation. V'ra'u es makos ha'aretz hahi v'es tachaluea. The plagues and the sicknesses that will befall the entire land. Okay? Gofris v'melach sreifa chol arza. Fire and brimstone. Lo tizarava lo tasmiach. The entire land will be barren. Lo ya'ale ba kol esev. There's not going to be any grass. K'mapecha Sodom va'amora. It's going to be like the destruction of Sodom and Amorah. It's going to be like total, complete desolation in the entire land. Why was God so wrathful on this place? And they're going to answer him, because they all abandoned the covenant of God. And they went and they worshipped other gods. Okay. So God exiled them. He exiled all of them. And he sent them away to another land. He exiled them. Okay, what's the problem with all of this? This whole thing that we just said now. The first part is clearly saying that there's either an individual or a small group of people that they're going to say, this Klal Yisrael thing is not for me. And they're going to go off and they're going to do their own thing. And it even says, if someone thinks that, then they're in for a surprise, because God will be hivdilo. He will separate him or them, right? The small group of them. He will make them distinct and make an example of them, so to speak. And then it segues into this whole thing, talking about what? Talking about the punishment of the entire Jewish people. The whole nation will be exiled, and the whole country will be completely desolate and destroyed.
What's connection?
Yeah?
Yeah, I hear the question.
You hear the problem? I just mamish thought of this today. You have the whole first section of it's the whole parsha, because it's not such a big parsha. The whole first section of the parsha is talking about an individual person, or again, yes, I understand a small group possibly, but a group of individuals who say that they want to abandon Klal Yisrael, and God saying, don't think that you can abandon Klal Yisrael. Don't think that you can do that. And then the next section is seeming to say that the result of those individuals abandoning Klal Yisrael, the outcome of that will be complete and total destruction nationwide. So what's the pshat? What's the pshat that's going on here? But I think that already, this is already being alluded to. Okay, the beginning of the destruction of the entire Am, is someone thinking that such a thought pattern is possible. That it's possible for the individual or the individual family to think of themselves as distinct from the rest of the Am. That is the beginning of the end. Because once individuals start thinking about themselves in that context, that they can be distinct, that is a fundamental breakdown of the entire structure of the Am. And I believe this is why the Torah uses this very, very strange language in the beginning. Pen yesh b'chem ish o isha, lest there be a man or woman amongst you, o mishpacha, o shevet, or a family or a tribe, asher levavo poneh hayom im Hashem Elokeinu, that his heart is turning away from God, laleches la'avod Elokei hagoyim hayim, and they're going to go worship other gods. Pen yesh b'chem shoresh, a root, poreh rosh v'la'ana. What's the root going to do? It's going to be poreh, to be fruit, like to grow, okay? Rosh v'la'ana. Rosh and la'ana are these bitter, thorns and thistles. What is it saying? Saying anyone who thinks this way, who thinks that they can go off and do their own thing, they are the shoresh, they are the root that's going to produce this whole thriving of horrible, poisonous weeds. They're going to be the root. It's the root, and it's going to bloom into this horrible, horrible thing. I want to read just a quick midrash from this week's parsha. It's a device throughout Devarim Rabbah to start off sections of the midrash with a halacha, and then to work the theme of the halacha into
mostly in the beginning of the parsha.
Mostly in the beginning, but also in the beginning of each siman, within the parsha.
But not, I mean, I haven't seen so many. It's most of the time at the beginning. Yeah.
So I'm going to show you an example right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you an example right now. Okay. So this is siman days of the parsha. Okay, in Medrash Rabbah Parsha Ches Siman days. Ki ha-mitzvah hazos asher anochi mitzavecha hayom. The mitzvah that I am commanding you today, lo niflesim mimcha, is not far and out of your reach. Says the midrash halacha. Adam Yisrael she'omid likro b'Torah keitzim levarich. Person who's going to read from the Torah, what should he bless? Okay, haposeach va'achosim b'Torah mevarich lefanei al hachreya. The person who goes to read the Torah, he must bless before and afterwards. Before and after. Minayin she'tu'una bracha lefanei al hachreya. This is a discussion in the Gemara in Brachos about brachos before, brachos after, bracha rishona versus bracha achrona. This is like a slightly augmented conversation about how do we know that you require a bracha before and after. It's interesting, by the way, you could just put this in parentheses for a moment, because seemingly what this is talking about is kriyas HaTorah, when someone goes up to receive an aliyah on the Torah, and they're supposed to make the bracha before and after. But what's interesting is that the original takana of Chazal was that the first ola Torah makes the first bracha, asher b'charbanu, and the last ola makes the last bracha, asher nasan lanu Torah emes. And in between there would be no one making any brachos. It's only a recent minhag that every ola makes the first and last bracha. Which is interesting to note. But already we see in the Midrash Rabbah, which is a relatively old source from the time of the late Amoraim, probably, that this was already a custom. This is interesting to note.
Is it true? I mean, I was putting another medrash where they brought up one of these halachos in Midrash Rabbah, and it said, I think by the tocha that we have there's a halacha that you can't break up the tocha into multiple parts.
Yes,
right, with multiple olim, because how could it be that Hakadosh Baruch Hu can't be getting a lot of brachos when the klal are close?
This is in a midrash.
This is in the Midrash Rabbah. It's one of the
Midrash Rabbah.
So it seems to be saying not exactly what you're saying. It seems to be there was a minhag from the time of the Midrash already.
No, I'm saying I'm bringing a ride to what you're saying. That we see that this practice dates back. It dates back to possibly late Amoraim already. It is. It is, of course, but not about this particular diyun.
It's not that recent.
Before and after, but not in regard, but not who makes, not who, not which oleh. Here it's mashma that every single oleh makes the bracha.
And it's mashma also by the toch. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, just put that in parentheses. Okay, so the person makes the bracha before and after. So how do we know the person makes the bracha before? So says the midrash because it's a pasuk in Tehillim Kuf Yud Tes. Pasuk Yud Beis. Boruch atah Hashem lamdeni chukecha. Blessed are you, God. Teach me your chukim. Harei bracha lefanea. Uminayin shetuna bracha lachrea. How do we know that the bracha should be said afterwards? Amru Shmuel bar Nachman b'shem Rav Yoson shekasav acher hashira. After the shira, what's the shira? Chazinu. After the shira, what does it say? Vezos habracha. Vezos habracha shevirach Moshe. Mishashana le'emes haTorah va'achar kach derech harei bracha lachrea. 2 points that we need to get out of here. First one is highlighting what we were alluding to a second ago. That this section of Sefer Bereisha, of Sefer Devarim, from Kisavo all the way through Nitzavim and Vayelech, through Ha'azinu, and through the end of the Torah, is one long sliding into home. It's the terms of the bris between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people, the delivering of that bris, the signing of the document, which is the Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah embodies the signing of the document, the giving over of that document, saying what the bris is going to look like being played out in Jewish history. That's Parshas Ha'azinu. And finally, Vezos HaBracha, the parting blessing, which is akin to the blessing that you make after you're done reading the Torah. It's the bracha at the end of the Torah. Another parenthetical comment, but it's very, very worth highlighting. The Rambam says an unbelievable chiddush in the beginning of Hilchos Sefer Torah. In Hilchos Sefer Torah, he says the following: how do we know that it's a mitzvah that each individual Jew has to write a Sefer Torah? A pasuk in Parshas Vayelech. Atem kisvu lachem es hashira azos. You all you individual people have to write this song. And say Chazal, this is the Shira is the Torah. So says the Rambam. It's not exactly saying that the Shira is the Torah. No, the Shira is Parshas Ha'azinu, as is evident from the Psukim themselves. However, says the Rambam, you're not allowed to write any of the sections of the Torah separate from all the other sections. That's the Gemara in Gittin says you can't write one section from the Torah separate from all the other ones. You have to write the entire Torah together. So it's true. The mitzvah is to write Parshas Ha'azinu, but because it's forbidden to write Parshas Ha'azinu without the rest of the Torah, so you have to write the rest of the Torah also. The Beresh of the Rambam, the beginning of Hilchos Sefer Torah. So it's again highlighting this is the Torah. This last section of Sefer Devarim from Kisavo until V'zos HaBracha, it's like the Torah in the condensed Torah. The bris, the klolos, the delivering of the bris, the bracha at the end, it's all there. This is the condensed Torah. And the mitzvah is to write this section, the Shira. But because we can't write just this one section without the rest of it, so we have to write the rest of it.
Is there a nafkamina that is the Shira?
Is there a nafkamina for what?
The fact that Hazino,
halacha?
Yeah, the Hazino is a Shira.
I don't know if there's a nafkamina lahalacha, because lamaisa you have to write the entire thing in order so that it could be a kosher Sefer Torah.
There's no difference between the Rabbim and other shittos in regards to the fact that he says the Shira is referring dafka to the...
He's more trout oriented.
No,
well, I'll tell you, there is a halachic nafkamina that Parshas Ha'azinu is called a Shira. There is a halachic nafkamina, and the nafkamina is that it needs to be written in the columns, the two columns in which Parshas Ha'azinu is written. Any Shira is also, the Gemara in Menachos says, any section of Torah that's meant to be written in a Shira that's not written in a Shira is pasul, and any part that's meant to be written normally and written in the form of a Shira is also pasul. So, like Shira Hayam and Parshas Ha'azinu, they have to be written in a certain format, and if they're not written like that, it's pasul. So that is a nafkamina, the fact that it's called a Shira. I don't know if that's the nafkamina that you're looking for, but sorry, I can't do better than that off the top of my head.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's point number one. Point number one, that these sections that we're reading right now is the Torah, the condensed Torah, and the mitzvah to write the Sefer Torah is learned by extension of the fact that you have to write this section. That's point number one I want to highlight. Point number two that I wanted to highlight is this interesting chiddush that the Midrash says, that we know that you have to make a bracha before reading the Torah from the pasuk in Tehillim, Baruch Atah Hashem Lamdeini Chukecha. Now, because the point of this chabura is to give a little bit of an expanded education in Jewish thought, so that's what we're going to do. This book that we're going to quote from is a book called Kara Kemach. It's a very, very important sefer written by Bachye ben Asher. Bachye ben Asher, who the parish of Rabbeinu Bachye on the Torah. Rabbeinu Bachye was a Talmud of the Rashba, and he didn't write too much on halacha. He wrote a few things on halacha, a sefer called Shulchan Shel Arba, which is on Hilchos Seuda, but he dealt mostly with Nistar, which is very interesting because his Rebbe, the Rashba, dealt very little with Nistar. We have the Chidushei Agodos of the Rashba, which are somewhat mystical, and there are Tshuvos of the Rashba that also deal with Inyonei Kabbalah. But mostly the Rashba was known as the Posek Hador. That's what the Rashba was doing. But his Talmidim Dafka continued on. Last week we mentioned Yosef Ha'aroch, who was a Talmud of Yoshua ibn Shoib, who was a Talmud of the Rashba. Both of them, Yoshua ibn Shoib and Yosef Ha'aroch, dealt exclusively in Nistar, and they came from the Shalshelas of the Rashba. So it's just interesting how that works out. There are a few other examples like that. For example, I'm sorry I'm going on a tangent a little bit, but it's just interesting. It's important to know these things. The Ran had three primary disciples. Okay? Who were the three primary disciples of the Ran? One was the Rivash. One was the Rivash of Yitzchak ben Sason. One was the Nemuke Yosef Chaviva. The other one was Chizdai Kraskas. Okay? Chizdai Kraskas. Okay? Now, those three people had completely different careers. Because the Rivash was a posek, he wrote Shuvos. The Shuvos are Rivash. The Nemuke Yosef was a parshan. He wrote commentaries. And which, by the way, the Nemuke Yosef that is printed in the back of the Shas, we only have it printed in the Shas, the Masechtos that the Ran didn't write a perush on. But the Nemuke Yosef wrote a perush of the Rif for I think 11 Masechtos.
Does it exist?
Exists. Yes. No, not in manuscript. It's printed. It's printed. You could buy the whole perush of the Nemuke Yosef on the Rif. on 11 Masechtos. But what's printed in the Shas Vilna are only the Masechtos that the Ran didn't write a parish on the Rif. So to fill in the gap, so to speak, they put the Mukhe Yosef. Anyway, so we have the Mukhe Yosef, which is a commentary on the Rif. That was his thing, right? He wanted to write commentaries, and he gathered in all the commentaries from the Ritva and from his Rebbe the Ran and from the Rashba, etc., etc. And then we have Chizdai Kraskas, who didn't deal with halacha at all. He was a big philosopher. He wrote a sefer called Milchamas Hashem, if I'm not mistaken, which is very, very, I don't want to say outlandish, but it's very, very, very out of the box, so to speak. So his three Talmidim, encompassed all of the qualities of the Ran, because the Ran was obviously a very big posek, right? We have Chuvas Haran, very, very important. We have the Chidushay Haran and the commentaries of the Ran on the Rif, so he was also a Parshan. And we have, we know that the Ran was a philosopher as well. The Drushos Haran, very, very important work on Jewish philosophy that he wrote as a reaction to the inroads of Aristotelian philosophy into Spain at that time. So anyway, this is just to highlight how very often you have a very, very big figure in the Jewish world who encompasses a tremendous amount, and he could be known for one thing, and his Talmidim, they are the ones that highlight the other kochos that he had that he didn't necessarily give over so much. So similarly, the Rashba, we know him primarily for his chuvos and his and being the posek hador, and it was his talmidim that kind of spread the machshava or the nister side. Anyway, that was just an important point to highlight. Anyway, so I'm reading from Rabbeinu Bachai in Kara Kemach. And Kara Kemach is a list of concepts, and he deals with them. It's listed in alphabetical order. It's kind of like an encyclopedia, and he unpacks these concepts and explains what they mean. So this is an erech bracha, explaining what the idea of bracha is. This opens up. This section opens up with this pasuk from Tehillim Kuf Yud Tes pasuk Yud Beis. Baruch atah Hashem lamdeini chukecha. Haya David HaMelech alav Shalom mevakesh b'kasav hazeh me'es HaKadosh Baruch Hu sheyitin lo shefa v'riboy hasaga b'yidiyaso. What is this request from God? Blessed are you, God. Teach me your chukim. So says Rabbeinu Bachai, this was the request from God. From God, David was asking God to give him an expansion in his understanding. He explains, this is a slightly different conversation, but he's explaining just the pshat of the word bracha. When you say Baruch atah Hashem, it's not saying blessed are you, God, like we're blessing God. That's not what it's saying. It's making a statement. It's making a statement that Hashem is the bracha. Or as Rabbeinu Bachai says, Kihu Pa'ul. Pa'ul. Bracha is Lashon Pa'ul. He is Be'etzem Makor HaBracha. God is the source of all blessing. So when we say Baruch Atah Hashem, we're saying you, God, are the source of all blessing. She'eino posek l'netzach netzachim. It's like a gushing stream that is always sending out and never stops. Okay? Skipping a few pages over here. Umizeh shetiknu chachamim, and this is why the chachamim were metaken the lashon of the bracha. Every single bracha is nitkan b'lashon nigle v'nistar. If you pay attention, every single blessing starts off in the first person and ends in the third person. The tense changes midway the bracha. Every single bracha is like this. Okay, we'll just give you an example to illustrate this. Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you, God. Shehechiyanu v'kiyamanu v'higyanu. What do those words mean? That He gave us life, and He sustained us, and He brought us to this place. You literally change the tense in mid-sentence. Every single bracha is like this. Yeah, shahakol niyeh right? Shahakol niyeh bidvaro. In His word. You don't say shahakol niyeh bidvarecha. Shahakol niyeh bidvaro. Baruch atah Hashem shahakol niyeh bidvaro. You change it in the middle of the sentence. Why do you do that? So says Rabbeinu Bachai, the reason you do that, Kidei likboa b'leiv shakadosh baruch hu niglev v'nistar. The God is both revealed and hidden at the same time. Karov v'rachok, close and far away. Mitzad haseichel, he is close and revealed from the perspective of the intellect. Nistar v'rachok mitzad atzmo, and from his from his essence, he is very, very far away. Because God occupies a reality which is fundamentally distinct from our reality. Ulezeh bikesh David b'lashon Baruch Atah Hashem lamdeni chukecha. Baruch Atah, blessed are you, God. Teach me your chukim. Masha amar chukecha v'lo mitzvosecha. That which David said, you are chukim and not your mitzvos. Lefi shahachukim yesh bahem sisrei Torah v'ta'alumos chachma. Because the chukim are alluding to the parts of the Torah that are hidden and have hidden wisdom in them. Umitocham yisrabeh al ha'adam shefa yedia ba'asagaso yisbarach. That's what David is asking for. He's not saying, God, please teach me the Torah. It's a much more specific request. It's saying, God, expand bracha, give me bracha, expand my understanding so that I can have access to the chukim, the hidden parts of Torah that are hidden from me. Expand me so that I can access that which is hidden from me. That's what this is. Baruch Atah Hashem l'bnei chukecha perush. Expand my mind so that I can have access to that which is hidden to me. That's the blessing. And this gives us insight into the midrash that we just read a moment ago. That the bracha that a person makes, the makor, the source that we know that a person needs to make a bracha on the Torah before he starts engaging in Torah, is from this pasuk. Baruch Atah Hashem l'bnei chukecha. And what's the nature of that blessing? It's a request from God to expand the person's mind and open their heart so that they can have access to that which is hidden from them. That's that bracha. That's the blessing.
No Torah.
Huh?
No Torah. The bracha of like to ask. What about the bracha is asking for that? Is it the aspect of asking?
Oh, you're asking how is that alluded to in the language of that initial initial blessing?
The source teaches us that asking for hidden wisdom. Do we apply that also to other things as well or no?
What do you mean? Do we apply?
What do you saying? The blessing itself.
I don't know if you have to put it in to say that the language of the blessing Asher b'charanu mikol ha'amim is an there's a lavush in Siman Mem Aleph in Bar-Hayim. It says very interesting that the three types of the brachos that we say in the Gemara in brachos, it says that there were different Amoraim that had three different versions of the bracha. We had Asher B'Charbanu is the first one. Ha'arev Na Hashem Elokeinu was the second one that was said by Rabbi Yochanan, and the last one is the third one is Lasok B'Divrei Torah. Lasok B'Divrei Torah. So Asher B'Charbanu, Ha'arev Na, and Lasok B'Divrei Torah. Says the Lavush. These are the classic forms of brachos. There are three classic categories of brachos. Birkas Hodah is Asher B'Charbanu, giving thanks to God. Okay. Ha'arev Na is Birkas Hananin. Ha'arev Na, it should be sweet for us. It should be beloved. Ha'arev Na. And Baruch Atah Hashem Lasok B'Divrei Torah is a Birkas HaMitzvah. Classic Birkas HaMitzvah. So in the language of the brachos, okay, that we say is included all of the different forms of the brachos. So the reason why a certain bracha in a certain time is phrased in a certain way doesn't necessarily have to reflect this idea that the essential theme underlying it is that we're asking God to expand our understanding. It doesn't necessarily have to reflect that. It could be reflecting other things. Anyway, just going back to what I was trying to say before. That which we started off with, this theme that Moshe is saying to the Jewish people that God has not given you a heart to know and eyes to see and ears to hear until this day. This is giving as they're entering the bris. Moshe is saying, listen, you guys experienced all this stuff. You were in Mitzrayim and you saw the Masos HaGedolos, the incredible Nisim, the incredible miracles that God did for you. You saw all of it. V'lo nosan lachem Hashem leiv lodas v'oznayim liros v'oznayim lishmo ad hayom hazeh. But God didn't give you the ability to know those things and understand the significance of them until today. Meaning you saw all those things, but you didn't appreciate the significance of them until now. You didn't have a heart to know. You didn't have a heart to know the significance of those things. And only now you were granted that heart. Only now you were granted a heart to understand the significance of those things. And this is highlighting what should be at the foundation of all of our tefillos, which is, in the end of the day, we have to recognize that our aspirations are based on a certain premise. And that premise is, I want X, Y, and Z because I think that this is the ideal. And that's great. It's great that we have ideals. It's great that we have aspirations and hopes and dreams and want to progress in things. But in the end of the day, we have to recognize that that is based on our understanding of what the ideal is. What we also have to be praying for is, God, give me a heart to know. Give me eyes to see. Give me ears to hear. Because it could be that I have no idea what it is that I should be wanting. It could be that I should be aspiring for something higher and more lofty. God did not grant the Jewish people a heart to know until that very day. Only when they got to that point, as Rashi said, were they able to go and protest when they saw that only Shevet Levi was receiving a Sefer Torah. Wait a minute, only Shevet Levi's getting a Sefer Torah? What about us? We also were at Sinai. Says Moshe, you wouldn't have asked that a year ago. A year ago, you wouldn't have made that request. A year ago, if I would have given the Sefer Torah to Shevet Levi, you said, okay, fine, Shevet Levi, they'll be in charge of the Torah. They'll do the Torah thing. If we have any questions about Torah, we'll go to them. That's what you would have said last year. But now I see that God gave you a heart to know. When I give the Torah only to Shevet Levi, you protest because you say, what about us? We also want direct access to the Torah. Just read it very, very quickly, just to end off over here, just to highlight this last point. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah, quoting this pasuk, the pasuk from the end of Parshas Kisavo, Lo nasan Hashem lachem leiv lo das, that God did not give you a heart to know. So Tanu Rabbanon. This is quoting a pasuk all the way back from Sefer Shemos when the Jewish people were at Sinai, and they're going up to the Torah, and they're going and receiving the Torah, and God sees that the Jewish people are in awe and trepidation from Sinai, and He says, halavai mi tein v'hayala v'vamzeh kol hayamim. Who halavai, that their hearts should be in the state of fear and trepidation all the time. Amar lahem Moshe liYisrael. When God said, who halavai, that the Jewish people should have this heart to be in fear of me all their days, haya lahem lomar tein ata. When the Jewish people heard God say that, what should their response have been? God, give us a heart. God is saying, mi tein v'hayala vavam zeh, halavai, that they should have this heart. So what should their response have been when they heard this? Okay, God, you want us to have this heart, so give us that heart. You want this to be our consciousness, so give us that consciousness. And they didn't ask it. They didn't ask that. Umelamed, says the Gemara, Melamed she'ein adam omed al da lo koy inish al adate derabe ad arba'in shnin. A person cannot know the thoughts of their teacher until 40 years. What's the 40 years? The 40 years in the desert. Think about what this Gemara is saying. I'm basing this on the Maharal's interpretation. I'm reading from the Chedushim Maharal here. We don't need to read the Maharal inside. But basically, what is the excuse me? The Maharal says, what's the point of what the Gemara is trying to say? The Jewish people were at Sinai and they heard God saying what He aspires for the Jewish people. God was saying explicitly, this is what I aspire, I want that they should have this heart. That they should have the heart of being in awe and appreciation for the loftiness of the Torah. This is what I want for them. And the Jewish people heard them say this. The Jewish people heard God say this. And what was their response? Nothing. Their response was nothing. And Moshe is saying, wait, you heard God say what He wants for you? Why didn't you say, okay, this is what you want for us, give it? And to which the Gemara responds, so we see from here that a person doesn't understand the thoughts of his teacher until 40 years. It takes him 40 years. What does that mean? It means that at the time, at Sinai, when the Jewish people heard God say, this is what I want for you, I want you to have a heart that is in fear and in awe and in appreciation of the Torah, the Jewish people did not have the capacity to ask for that at that moment. They didn't have the ability. They didn't have the ability to ask for that. And only at the very end of the story does Moshe say, now I see that Hashem gave you leiv ladas, now I see that you do have the heart. Before, 40 years ago, you didn't have the heart. You heard what God wanted for you, you didn't know to ask for it. It's like a parent. This happens. These things seem so far from us that they're like some type of fantasy story. But these things happen to us all the time. A small child hears the words coming out of their parent's mouth and saying, halavai, that you should be successful and you should graduate college and you should get married and you should be a big Talmud Chacham and all this stuff. Right? The child hears the parent say these things. He could repeat them back, but they don't mean anything. All these values, all these dreams and hopes of the parent don't mean anything to the child. It's only after the child grows up a little bit and their consciousness develops and expands can they understand, this is what my parent was hoping for me. So too, when the Jewish people heard at Sinai, I want to give you a heart. I want to give you a heart, God said to the Jewish people. The Jewish people said, okay, that's nice. God wants to stab a heart. And that was their nonchalant response to that. And only at the very end of the story, when the Jewish people are fully, have fully come into their own, Hayom hazeh niyesa la'am, as Moshe says, today you have clearly become a nation. Today you have clearly become a nation. And the becoming of the nation, this is indicated by the fact that Hashem gave you a heart to know, indicated by the fact that you want a direct connection to the Torah. It's not enough for you to have, Shevet Levi give you instructions. Oh, I need to bring it back home to the point that we made before. Excuse me, I totally forgot about that. The point that we made in the very beginning over here at the Pshat level, that we see that there are people that protest, that they say we're not interested in being part of Klal Yisrael. We're going to go our own way. God says you can't go your own way. You can't go your own way because you're part of the Jewish people. You're part of the people. You can't do your own thing. The message of that idea is not just to say that you're stuck being part of the Jewish people. You're stuck. There's no way out. This is what you got to do. What's being communicated in that message is that the hopes and aspirations of the individual can never amount to the hopes and aspirations of the mission of the Am, the mission of the people, of the collective people. What does this person say? This Isha, Mishpacho, Shevet, what do they say? Bishrirus libi elech. I'm going to go after what seems good to my heart. God's response to that is, don't think that what your heart thinks is good is really the best that could be. Almost by definition, it can't be the best that it could be. Because you're just only one guy. The aspirations of the collective, of the community, of the Am, of the coming together of the whole Am, is almost by definition more lofty and more profound than your individual thing. That's what's being communicated. It's for you. Don't think that you could go do your own thing, because if you go do your own thing, it's going to be so small. It's going to be such a small version of what you could do if you're part of this movement, if you're part of this collective, if you're part of this project. Right? Because ultimately the bris, the covenant, is between me and the Am. That's what it is. If you want to be part of this story, you have to see yourself. You have to see the individual has to see themselves as part of the Am, and then they can play out. They can play out this lofty thing. And ultimately, all of this comes back to this point that we're trying to make, that God has to give you a heart to know what it is that you're going to aspire for. That's ultimately what it is. We can work with the premises of what we want and what we're hoping for and what we're aspiring for, but we have to be able to go back and say that, you know what, in the end of the day, Baruch Ata Hashem lamdeni chukecha, open me up to what I don't know. Open me up to what I don't know. Because in the end of the day, my heart is only what it is now. It could be a lot more. It could be a lot more than what it is right now. Open my heart to what I don't know. Mizrat Hashem. Right now in Rosh Hashanah is the time to think about this. During the rest of the year, we can focus on individual projects, individual goals. But now going into Rosh Hashanah is the time to think about renewing the heart. Renewing the heart.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.